All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Carrie Vollmer-Sanders, President of Field to Market, and I'm excited to welcome you to our webinar today, Advancing Regenerative Agriculture, Practical Guidance for Measurable Impact. Field to Market recently released its Regen Ag Guidance, which equips the ag value chain with essential tools and resources to implement, measure, and advance regenerative outcomes that contribute to healthier, more viable farming systems. Today, we welcome guest speakers from PepsiCo, the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol, and the Nature Conservancy to discuss their perspectives on regenerative agriculture and how it supports ecosystem resilience, human health, and farmer livelihoods. You'll also learn how Field to Market's guidance can inform implementation of regenerative agriculture efforts across the value chain. Field to Market's vision is to build strong support systems to enhance both farmer livelihoods and resilient ecosystems. To help ensure we make progress towards our vision, we listen to, engage with, and build trust with our members throughout the entire ag value chain. Field to Market was created nearly 20 years ago, building trust and action by uniting the ag value chain to define, measure, and advance the sustainability of food, feed, fiber, and fuel production in the U.S. Just as our definitions of sustainability and regenerative agriculture were created, so was this guidance through a collaborative, consensus-based process with contributions from all 5 of our member sectors, including farmers, civil society, affiliates, which means researchers, universities, and government, and agribusiness, and brands and retailers. We are committed to developing science-based, transparent resources to build trust across the ag value chain. At Field to Market, we have sector balance in our decision-making all the way through, including our board of directors, to ensure equal representation and equal voice across the membership and within the value chain. We currently have nearly 200 members representing the 5 sectors and engaging in all aspects of agriculture. And we're committed to meeting the needs of our membership. And this regenerative agriculture guidance was developed as a result of member demand over the course of the last 12 months with input from all of our sectors. But before we dig into the guidance, I want to take a step back and highlight Field to Market's consensus-based and widely accepted definition of regenerative agriculture, which serves as the foundation for this guidance. Using a systems-based perspective, regenerative agriculture sequesters carbon in the soil and intentionally improves soil health, biodiversity, water quality, and air quality while ensuring the viability of farm production. Regenerative agriculture is increasingly recognized for its role in improving environmental outcomes as well as human and community health. And research shows that regenerative practices can enhance soil health, biodiversity, climate resilience, and resource efficiency. And our definition is also supported by a series of principles. In addition to leading Field to Market, I'm also a farmer in Northeast Indiana and Northwest Ohio. And this wheat field is an example of how we are implementing Regen Ag principles on our farm. We no-till regularly, minimizing soil disturbance. And you can see where the wheat's been harvested, there's this green tint to the field. That's clover. It's a legume which fixes nitrogen naturally, and it's just starting to take off. That cover crop seed, that clover, was spread in April at the same time we applied our fertilizer. And it began to grow alongside the wheat, not impacting the yield, but allowing us to maintain living roots in that soil and essentially continuously covering the soil. That clover is going to provide habitat for pollinators this summer. It'll keep the soil covered throughout the winter, and it'll give soil microbes food throughout the year. Now, we don't have livestock on our farm, but I do love how manure can improve the soil. And we use it every few years. But as a farm in the Western Lake Erie Basin watershed, when we apply that manure, we must incorporate it. Still just a few inches, but we do till the soil every few years to get that manure in the soil. Not every farmer can implement this system. Farmer systems, they vary across regions based on cropping rotations, soil types, and farm management. Now, while the underlying principles remain the same, by focusing on an outcome-based approach rather than prescribing specific practices, it allows farmers like myself and others to apply these principles in ways that align with our unique conditions while driving positive outcomes. As a farmer, I've seen firsthand the positive impacts of regenerative agriculture, which allow us to help provide cleaner air and water, enhanced biodiversity and wildlife habitats, and improve our family and our community's well-being. By focusing on the health of our soil and our crops and natural resources, we can improve the yields, increase our resource efficiency and more precision, and leave a legacy for our children and generations to come. Now I'd like to hand it over to Coralie Pierre, Field to Market's Director of Programs and Partnerships. She's led the effort of creating this guidance alongside our membership. Thank you, Coralie, for your leadership, and take it away.
Thank you, Carrie. So yeah, as Carrie mentioned, I'm Coralie Pierre. I'm the Director of Program and Partnership at Field to Market. And before we get into the guidance itself, I really want to take some time to briefly walk through how it was developed. So as Carrie mentioned, this guidance reflects nearly a year of collaborative work led by a regenerative agriculture subgroup that was made up of members from across all Field to Market membership sectors. And you can see their logos on the slide here. So all of those logos that you've seen here are our regenerative ag subgroup member. So the outline and initial contents of this guidance were drafted based on the subgroup input during monthly meeting, then refined through an iterative process. A key part of that process was a month-long member comment period, which gave all Field to Market members an opportunity to provide feedback, and many of the suggestions received help strengthen the final guidance, which was then approved by the board before publication. So, and to ensure transparency, we are also publishing a comment summary report that outlines how member feedback helped shape the guidance. So really as version 1.0, this guidance laid a foundation for Field to Market regenerative agriculture framework, which is organized around 3 key pillars. We have environmental, social, and economic. So the environmental pillar highlights the positive environmental impact of regen ag practices and how they can be measured using Field to Market 8 environmental indicator. The social pillar acknowledges the important role regen ag can play in supporting farmer livelihood and farming communities. And the economic pillar underscored the need for regenerative practices to be financially viable, ensuring long-term adoption at the farm level. The guidance also includes a case study showing how the FieldPoint platform, which is Field to Market farm-level measurement tool, can be used to track implementation and measure outcomes. And finally, the guidance map alignment with existing framework to ensure consistency with broader industry efforts. So now let's take a closer look at each of those pillars, starting with the environmental one. So this slide here provides a summary of the environmental section of the guidance. It really outlines how Regen Ag can drive improvement across 5 key environmental categories, such as biodiversity, climate, land, soil, and water. Each of these categories is linked to specific indicator and measurable outcome, all of which can be tracked using the FieldPoint platform. So the biodiversity category focuses on increasing habitat and species diversity, creating conditions where a range of plant and animal can thrive. The climate category includes energy use, greenhouse gas emission, and soil carbon, focusing on reducing energy consumption and emission while increasing soil carbon sequestration. The land category shows how regenerative practices can help optimize land use efficiency by maintaining or even increasing yield on existing acres. The soil category highlight soil conservation and the role of regenerative practices in reducing erosion. And last but not least, the water category include irrigation water use and water quality indicator, showing how regen ag practices can help improve water use efficiency, increase crop yield, and reduce nutrient runoff. The environmental pillar also illustrates how the Philpin platform can help bring regenerative agriculture principles to life. So this table maps the relationship between the principle developed as part of field to market regen ag definition that Kerry talked about earlier, example of practices that help achieve those principles, and the Philpin platform input that capture those practices. A solid dot here represent a strong direct relationship where the practice clearly drive measurable change in a given indicator. An open dot on the other end reflect a more indirect connection where the practice still impact some of those indicators but isn't the primary driver. For example, action taken to minimize soil disturbance and maintaining living roots in soil can directly improve soil conservation and soil carbon indicator by reducing erosion and increasing carbon sequestration. The same practices may have some indirect benefit as well, like optimizing land use or reducing irrigation needs by improving overall soil health and system efficiency. And that's why you can see empty dot for land use and irrigation water use for those principles. It's also important to note here that not all direct impacts are positive. For instance, planting cover crop may also increase energy use due to the additional field passes required for planting and terminating the cover crop. So in summary, this table shows how regenerative practice, principle, supporting practices, and field print indicator work together to track progress, inform decision making, and advance regenerative outcome across key environmental areas. So here is a visual example of how the Philpin platform reflects changes in environmental performance based on different management practices. So when farmers enter their management data in the platform, it generates this diagram that you can see here that shows their footprint across all 8 environmental indicators, alongside state and national benchmark. So this provides farmers a holistic view of their performance and also areas for improvement. Here, results closer to the center indicate a smaller footprint. So the goal is to move inward over time. In the first example, the field is managed with conventional tillage and no cover crop, while in the second one, reduced tillage and included and cover crop are used. And you can see clear improvement in some of the indicator like soil conservation, soil carbon, water quality, and biodiversity. Meanwhile, land use, energy use, and greenhouse gas emission remain relatively unchanged since in this scenario, reduced tillage and cover crop balance each other out. And to show how the guidance can be applied in a project setting, we've also included a fictional case study that is based on a simulation run under realistic condition in order to provide a practical example of how farmers can use the platform to measure and track the impact of regenerative practices across their field. So in this scenario, Organization A set out to improve its environmental impact by partnering with cotton and peanut farmer supplier to adopt regenerative practices and monitor their progress. So the project was carried out in 4 phases. Each phase spanned 3 years, except for phase 4, which extended to 4 years. So during phase 1, farmers collected baseline data using conventional practices in a cotton peanut rotation. They introduced strip till in phase 2 while continuing the same crop rotation. In phase 3, strip till was continued and cover crop were added for 1 season. And in phase 4, they maintained strip till and began planting cover crop after every harvest. And as a result, soil carbon and soil conservation both improve over time, while greenhouse gas emission fluctuated slightly but consistently stayed below the original baseline. So this simulation really helped illustrate how combining multiple practices over time can lead to meaningful environmental improvement and how the FieldPoint platform support tracking those changes. And again, you won't have to wait for 13 years to see improvement if you are implementing regenerative practices and using the FieldPoint platform. That was just the case study. And if you're interested in more detail on how those indicators shifted, feel free to take a look at the full guidance that I'm pretty sure we added in the chat by now. So while much of the focus around regenerative agriculture centers on environmental outcome, it's just as important to consider the people behind the practices and the economic realities they face. And that's where the economic and social pillars of our framework come in. So the economic pillar builds on Field to Market Innovative Finance Report, which was developed back in 2022 to outline 5 groups of financial blueprint to help manage the risk of adopting conservation practices. The strategy offers ways for value chain partners to better support farmers, both agronomically and financially, on the path to sustainability. So we have blended finance, which is the use of public or philanthropic capital to unlock private investment. The second blueprint is sustainable finance that provide financial products that drive better environmental outcome. Transition risk sharing offset specific risk farmers face when adopting new practices. Pay for performance program reward farmers for measurable environmental outcome they achieve. And land tenure and leasing incentive promotes stewardship on both owned and rented land. We will also share the link of the full finance report in the chat if you'd like to explore it further. And while key highlights of this blueprint are included in our Region Ag guidance, they only serve as the foundation of the economic pillar, which will be more fully developed in future iteration as the guidance continue to evolve. Moving to the social pillar, which underscore the importance of ensuring that Region Ag also support the people at the heart of the system. So Field to Market recognize that the long-term success of Region Ag depend on those implementing and sustaining these practices. And to support this, we will be developing a social guidance focused on 3 key areas, such as positive social outcomes, resilient agricultural communities, and farmer well-being. Key findings from that work will also be reflected in future iteration of the Region Ag guidance. So that's wrap up the 3 core pillars of the Field to Market Regenerative Agriculture Framework. Now let's take a look at how the guidance align with other regenerative agriculture framework across the industry. So to develop this mapping, we closely examine the language and metric used across member initiatives and global framework to see where they overlap and where they differ. So our goal wasn't to reinvent the wheel, but to build on industry best practices using an outcome-driven approach that reflects and respond to our members' priorities. So the table gives a quick snapshot of how different framework, both region ag specific and broader climate and nature initiatives, address key environmental, economic, and social impact areas. Note that the social and economic dimension in some framework, including Field to Markets, are still under development, and more detail on each of those impact area is available in the guidance. One important point to highlight here is what makes Field to Market framework unique, which is how it was developed with input from stakeholders across the feed, food, fiber, and fuel sector, and with growers at the center. It reflects both real-world experience and shared priorities across the value chain. The guidance also includes a non-exhaustive list of Region Ag certification and verification program that may be useful for those looking to better understand or engage with this existing option. And here is the list. Again, more information on each of them is available on the guidance, and we also highlighted their key areas of focus, whether it is environmental, social, or animal welfare. So now that you've seen how the guidance is structured, I wanted to show how this concept are being applied in practice through Field to Market Field Point project. So these projects are member-led initiatives that are registered in our public project directory, which leverage the FieldPoint platform to engage farmers, support the adoption of sustainable and regenerative practices, and track measurable outcome. Each project is designed to meet specific goal, and the FieldPoint project framework really offer a flexible yet credible way to demonstrate progress, foster collaboration, and tell a data-driven story of impact. So now let's see how those projects are usually designed. So this is how the FieldPoint project bring the full value chain together to put regenerative agriculture into action. Those projects, of course, they include growers. They are central to every project. They are the one who adopt the practices and use the FieldPoint platform to make data-informed decision and in some cases access new market opportunities. Another key player in those projects is the implementation partners, which can be conservation district, extension agent, NGOs, that provide critical underground support from technical assistance to data entry. We also have aggregator, processors, and co-op who contribute through technical guidance, market access, and in many cases, they direct project leadership and financial support. And brand and retailers often serve as project lead and funders, helping meet their sustainability goal by supporting farmers and reducing their product footprint. So this project really reflect true value chain collaboration, and each stakeholder play a unique and essential role in driving regenerative outcome on the ground. And here is an example of a real FieldPoint project. This is a project led by ADM and PepsiCo. Actually, one of today's speakers is from PepsiCo, and she will be telling you more about their Region Ag work in a few. But within this project, ADM and PepsiCo partner with several NGOs and government agencies like Practical Farmers of Iowa, Ducks Unlimited, American Farmland Trust, Kansas Association of Conservation District, the Minnesota Soil Health Coalition to support farmers in adopting regenerative practices, focusing on cover crop, reduced tillage, and fertilizer efficiency across their corn, soy, and wheat supply chain. This project aimed to accelerate adoption by equipping farmers with the support and resources needed to implement these practices effectively, driving measurable improvement in biodiversity, greenhouse gas emission, and soil conservation. And in 2024 alone, the project engaged more than 1,300 growers across over 440,000 acres. So that was just one example of how our members are already translating regenerative agriculture into action on the ground. But many of our members have set bold targets to scale Regen Ag, which really demonstrate the growing ambition across the value chain. And the commitments shown here are just a few examples. Field to Market, we play a key role in turning this goal in helping our members turning this goal into measurable outcome. So the Region Ag Guidance is one way we support our members and the broader ag community with credible tools and resources to adopt regenerative practices and align efforts across the value chain. And we are fortunate to be joined today by some of our members who will share how their organization are putting this commitment into action. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce our speakers. First, we'll have Caitlin Colworth, Sustainable Agriculture Lead for North America at PepsiCo. Next, we'll hear from Deepika Mishra, Standard and Data Lead for the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol, and then from Chris Johnson, Director of Agriculture for the Nature Conservancy, North America. Each speaker will present individually, and we'll all come back together at the end for the Q&A session. Caitlin, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Coralie. You can hear me okay? Fantastic. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. So fantastic to see a robust group of folks here excited to talk about regenerative agriculture. My name is Caitlin Colgrove. I have the honor of leading the work that we do on regenerative agriculture at PepsiCo across our North America portfolio. So the programs that we've got running on the ground in US and Canada. Wanted to I've just got a couple of very short slides here and then excited really to hear from the other speakers and get to Q&A. But wanted to, you see up here, right, our kind of overall regenerative agriculture framework as a company, which I think looks incredibly familiar. It's completely aligned to what Carrie and Coralie were sharing earlier in terms of the field to market framework. But wanted to, before I even do that, maybe take a little bit of a step back and talk about our broader strategy as a company around regenerative agriculture and some of kind of the why and the how connected to our ambitions here. So to start with, PepsiCo as a company is rooted in agriculture. So if you think across all of the different brands in our portfolio, both on the beverage and also on the food side, we source 35 major crops around the world, things like oats, potatoes, corn, from more than 60 countries. And so our business is reliant on a healthy agricultural system. And there's a real understanding of that within our company, that kind of our future success is really tied to the resilience and health of farmers and all of those crops that they're growing. And so to that end, we've really been working to embed sustainability across our business operations because, we believe that it can lead to stronger results, to better, more resilient long-term businesses, and just to operational resilience. We also believe that healthier soil has the potential to drive better yields for farmers and to grow better ingredients in the long term. And we believe that regenerative agriculture can be a powerful tool to promote that healthier soil, as well as do things like enhance biodiversity and watershed health, and in some cases helping to enhance the standard of living for farmers and for rural communities. Coralie noted this on the previous slide, but to that end, we've recently increased our global regenerative agriculture goal. So we're now aiming to drive the adoption of regenerative, restorative, or protective practices across 10 million acres by 2030. That was an expansion from an original 7 million acre goal. And excited to say that as of 2024, globally, we've had 3.5 million acres that we've already engaged on, kind of looking across our portfolio. And also excited to say that the work that we've done in the US through partners like Field to Market and many others on the call is really driving a large piece of that scale when we look at what's being delivered. So wanted to just start with that, and then maybe I'll move to the next slide and just talk a little bit about the how connected to this work. And I think the example that Coralie shared of our partnership with ADM is a great example of this. And maybe I'll take a little bit of a step back and talk a bit about the structure around this. So, as we really invest in this work, I think we're very humble about where we sit in the value chain, right? And want to make sure that we are really leading with a farmer first approach and really listening to farmers, but also getting out of the way, right, in places where we may not be helpful. And so we really prioritize working directly with farmers and with trusted farmer-facing organizations that are in those local communities that we're sourcing from to understand the needs of farmers and provide, incentives and agronomic guidance and technology and other resources to help with the transition. And I just underscore that like these practices are not one size fits all. We really recognize that each farm adopts, what makes sense for their region, for their crops, for their management goals within their system. And so we really seek to co-develop programs with partners that reflect that need for flexibility. So you kind of see here in the diagram that all of the programs that we have structured are always voluntary for folks to participate in. They've always got flexibility built in so that you can kind of meet growers where they are and also adopt a continuous improvement approach, right? Of kind of that, how much you build over time. And we're always looking to collaborate with others across the value chain, with peers and others. We really believe that, the way to drive this is to move this work to scale. We know we can't do that alone. And so we're always looking to bring more and more folks to the table. And really to do this in a way that's aligned. As I mentioned earlier, kind of the way that all this happens is through amazing farmer-facing organizations. And so you see on the screen here some logos of just some of the folks who we specifically partner with across the US Midwest. And then kind of as we create these programs for partners, we have found we've really seen success when they've got what we sometimes call sort of a three-legged stool approach. So where we're combining, yes, financial incentives, right, and really looking to de-risk practice adoption for farmers and really support farmers. That's always a critical piece, but also critical is that that's paired with really solid and again, locally rooted agronomic support, which is where that third-party partner comes in, and that partner is also enabling peer-to-peer learning, right? I think we see over and over again that farmers learn best from other farmers. So how that comes to life, kind of the unique structure of those partnerships, and how growers engage with it differs, right? Depending on the realities within that particular value chain, and the needs. But that's the broad brush kind of framework that we're always looking for when we structure these partnerships. And then maybe I'll leave you with the last slide, which is just another example of how this sort of thing comes to life, and a bit of a testimonial from one of the growers who's involved in one of the programs that we have with Soil Water Outcomes Fund. And I liked this because it was I think a real example of how a program on the ground is driving a lot of the outcomes that Coralie spoke to earlier in the presentation. We indeed, by adopting these practices, we are, this grower is seeing the outcomes that they hope to see, and it's driving real impacts for their bottom line, but also for the overall resiliency of their operation as they look into the future. So I will leave it there. I look forward to any questions, and I get to hand it over from here to Deepika.
Thank you, Caitlin. Jumping right in. Hello, everyone. I'm Deepika Mishra. I work as Standards and Data Lead for the Trust Protocol. So who we are, Coralie next. So the US Garden Trust Protocol was launched in 2020, and it is a voluntary sustainability program for US garden growers, as well as the traceability platform for all US garden. It's a science-based program that provides data-driven verification for members sourcing US garden. Next. So what does regenerative agriculture means to us and to our grower? And you have seen these principles already in Coralie's talk. at its heart, regenerative agriculture is a holistic philosophy. It's not just about following a rigid checklist. It's more about understanding the land, understanding minimizing disturbance in the soil, keeping living roots in the soil. Again, this language, this shared understanding, it comes directly from the Field to Market's guidance, and it is powerful because it bridges sectors. It gives growers, brands, and stakeholders a common way to talk about regenerative practices. Next, so here is where the magic happens. How did we in Trust Protocol take the guidance into measurable action? And through our collaboration with Field to Market, we have helped translate this broad guidance into actionable strategies for our growers. Things like practices like cover cropping, like tillage, conservation practices, nutrient use efficiency, conservation tillage, IPM implementation. All of that, all of these practices are tracked and verified in our system. And on the other end, what we are doing is we aren't just checking off the practices, we are tracking how these practices are leading to quantifiable benefits, the outcomes, which is our carbon sequestration, GHG reductions, water quality, and so on and so forth. What happens in between this intersection, and this guidance talks quite a lot about it, is practices plus outcomes. And this is where the impact becomes real. And this is where we program who use Field to Market. We create process integrity. We create market credibility, scalable standards. We create measurable progress. More importantly, ensuring compliance. And we are already next. And we're already seeing this impact at scale. These are a few numbers from our 2024 annual report, which represents roughly 30% of the US cotton acres. And you can see from the report, 87% of the reported footprint acres were implementing 4R principles on nutrient management, right source, rate, time, place. 75% of the reported acreage, they're already integrating the IPM strategies. Over half, they use no-till, reduced tillage. 62% of the Trust Protocol, they utilize cover crop. And again, crop rotation is implemented nearly 3/4. These numbers that you have on the screen, they aren't just pilot statistics. This is at scale. These are field level data points which are collected year after year, and they demonstrate how US cotton growers are actively adopting regenerative principles. If I have to sum up this slide, this guidance pretty much gives us structure and clarity. It defines the why, and programs like us Trust Protocol data shows the how. Moving to next. Now, talking about collaboration, because none of this would be possible without strong alignment between the Trust Protocol and Field to Market. And just to back up, just to understand the current needs, brands need credible region claims with additional frameworks. You already saw that in Corley's presentation, SBTI, SBTN. Farmers need flexibility, incentives, support, not mandates. And more importantly, industry needs harmonization, not duplication. And what is happening is our work, it is sitting right at the site in the nexus of farmers and brands and regenerative practices. This, I mean, all of you in this webinar probably have heard it, and they are gaining traction. And now when it comes for scaling, especially for programs like Trust Protocol, we bridge the ground level implementation with value chain expectations. And this is exactly what this collaboration does. Again, this collaboration isn't just a checkbox, it's how we are building a credible, unified approach to regenerative cotton. With that, I'm gonna hand it over to Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepika. Please take it over.
Great. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks Deepika and Corley. Yeah, and it's great to be here. It's great to join you all today. And thanks to Field to Market for getting us together to have the conversation. So I lead our work in agriculture in North America at the Nature Conservancy. And for any of you not familiar with us, so we're a large conservation organization. We have as a mission to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends. And one of our key global strategies related to that mission is to do what we can to help ensure that humanity can provide food and water sustainably. So this topic of regenerative agriculture is obviously, really central to that mission because, as we all know, many of the ways that we have kind of historically and conventionally produced food around the world present significant threats to climate and to water and to soil health over the long run. And they also present, huge opportunities to make progress related to climate change, to make progress related to our freshwater quality and our biodiversity. And so TNC is committed to doing what we can to help advance regenerative agriculture in food systems, here in North America where I work, but also kind of all around the world. And I'm going to say a lot of things that have been said earlier by Coralie, in talking about the field to market guidance and that Caitlin alluded to related to Pepsi. So what do we mean by regenerative agriculture at TNC? Well, I think, a lot of the same themes you'll hear. So it's a systems approach. It's really thinking kind of holistically about agricultural lands, about food production systems. And it's also kind of a combination of both sort of a vision and a set of principles and also a set of practices. The practices on their own are good practices. They're good things to do, but really they vary from place to place. They vary from farm to farm and from situation to situation. And so having sort of an overall vision of the fact that, regenerative agriculture is really, it's about restoring, it's about rebuilding, it's about trying to design and redesign and remember how we manage agriculture in ways that are kind of more in harmony with nature, in harmony with sort of natural functions. That's kind of the vision and the principle that we have kind of central to how we think about regenerative ag. But it also needs to be outcome based. It can't just be, simply sort of a 30,000-foot vision and principles. It actually has to be tangible and measurable. It has to be something that we can work towards and we can make progress towards. And so I think all of those kind of ways in which we think about regen ag align with, with field to markets guidance and with what others have said on the call today. So the Nature Conservancy, what are we kind of doing in this realm? It's hard to sum that up in just a couple minutes, but I think briefly, we are a project-based organization. We have chapters in every state in the U.S. We work in more than 80 countries around the world. And so, we kind of get our hands dirty and work locally with farmers and with ranchers, with conservation districts, with CCAs and ag retail and other partners to implement projects on the ground. And then we also, especially in recent decades, I think as all of us have realized just how complex some of these global challenges are, just how interconnected we all are, we've also built sort of regional strategies and regional programs to try to help stitch together our local projects and connect the work that we do on the ground with strategies that align us with, public and private partners, working to advance regen ag all around the world and all across North America. So, examples of that can be found almost anywhere. Here in my home state of Minnesota, we've had a great project for the last number of years, working with dairy farmers, working with others to deliver technical assistance, to deliver incentives, to implement practices on the ground in connection with water quality outcomes, in connection with greenhouse gas assessment outcomes. And we've had a number of corporate partners in projects like that, projects in Nebraska and Indiana and Chesapeake Bay and a variety of other places. Let's see. The other ways we work sort of with the value chain are also on kind of strategy and target setting and goal setting. I think we work, with many field to market members and with many others, and every company, just like every farmer and rancher, are sort of at a different point on the journey with how they're implementing or how they're thinking about regenerative agriculture. And so in some cases, companies are kind of on the front end, and we help sort of set goals and build out a strategy for how they can work with their partners, work with their suppliers, work with their customers to integrate regenerative agriculture into their business. And then some companies are much further along that journey. They have established goals, they've made public-facing commitments, and then we can be kind of an implementation partner. Because I think at the end of the day, when we're talking about trying to scale regenerative agriculture, we're talking about, millions of individual farmers and ranchers making decisions on, their own lands in ways that work for their operations and that work for their families and their livelihoods. And so what we have to try to do is recognize that regenerative agriculture, these practices that we'd like to see adopted, they have to be, financially viable. They've got to be technically feasible. They've got to be socially acceptable. They have to be able to be adopted by farmers and ranchers. And so we feel like, all of us, the Nature Conservancy, working with our company partners, working with our public partners, we have a role to play in trying to reduce barriers for farmers and ranchers to make it easier and more viable for more and more operators and producers to find it, it makes sense to transition to adopting more and more regenerative practices. So let's see, I will just wrap up and say, I think, the framework guidance document that Field to Market has generated is great. It's timely. It aligns with, of course, the fundamental soil health principles, the things that Carrie alluded to about keeping the soil covered and diversity and integrating livestock and those things. We've all known that for a while, and they remain kind of fundamental principles of good agriculture. And so it's great to see, the guidance building on that. It's great to see alignment with the SAI platform and with other kind of, globally recognized kind of leaders in this space. And it's also really great to see, the integration of the environmental and the ecological and the social. I think that's something that all of us can tend to forget, especially in recent years, as we've thought more and more about greenhouse gas emissions and climate change and carbon footprint. We can get a little bit of tunnel vision and forget that we are talking about a system. We are talking about multiple benefits, and we are talking about people and operators and communities, and not just, units of environmental change that we want to assess. So really having that kind of holistic vision of regen ag, I think is essential. The last thing I'll say is I love the connection between the guidance and the field print calculator. I think the field print calculator is a really slick and great way to kind of engage growers, give them a chance to sort of see how they're performing over time and relative to their peers. But the thing I'll say is what we're hearing a lot from companies and partners, and what we're observing over time, is there's also a need for all of us to kind of zoom out a little bit and think about landscapes, think about supply sheds, think about how can we sort of not forget about the farm by any means at all, but sort of step back so that we create space for kind of cross-partner, cross-sector, multi-commodity collaborations that can facilitate change that we all want to see. We don't want to sort of lose the forest for the trees and focus too much on an individual farm and forget that it is part of this sort of commodity system and this food system that's a little bit larger and more regional. And so we see a lot of opportunity and a lot of challenge to try to build our collective capability to work at that landscape scale to try to catalyze change. So I'll leave it there. I know we've just got 10 minutes or so left, but thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I want to thank all of our panelists, and Paul Hishma has joined us. Paul, thank you so much. Paul leads our work in science and technology. And can you please, before we start the Q&A, just do a quick introduction of yourself to the audience and talk about how members are using or can use the FieldPrint platform to support their Regen Ag goals?
Sure, happy to. Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, Paul Hishma, VP of Science and Technology. Amazingly excited to see all the progress here in Regen Ag. Yeah, we have, I think, at least a half dozen or so projects active in Regen Ag, most of them, I believe, led by ADM with partners such as Pepsi, some of that you heard of, but also others such as Mars and Nestle. You can go to our project directory. We probably drop a link and search Regen in the project directory and learn more about those projects. And then what's great, I think, about the framework is we have a lot of existing projects, 60 some projects. And if you think about Coralli's mapping out of regen principles and some of the practice interventions and then our metrics, all those projects are already measuring on those metrics. So we think about working backwards. Almost every existing project has the opportunity to begin looking at regen principles and sort of leveraging existing projects they have in flight.
Thanks, Paul. So remember, if you have a question, put it in the Q&A. We've got 10 questions to go through. We probably aren't going to get through all of them. But one of the questions was about who do you see adopting this platform with all the recent funding cuts? And I'll say we've got about 64 million acres enrolled in the FieldPrint platform across 64 projects and about 10,000 farmers in the US. So you can see the commitments that Coralli mentioned, and hearing from both all three of our panelists today, the focus and support for Regen Ag and sustainability hasn't really diminished with funding cuts. The support is still there. Farmers strive not just to be sustainable or regenerative, but to continually improve, and part of that comes from just learning more and understanding their data and their farms situation. So I don't think that's going to go away. So I think it's going to continue to be farmers that want to improve that are adopting the platform, companies that remain true to their goals. And Caitlin, I want to turn it over to you. There's been a couple of questions about your projects and your company's commitments. So as was mentioned, you do a lot to support farmers, but there's a few questions just around the commodity focus and the assistance that you offer farmers, whether it's just financial or technical. So if you could share a little bit more about that, that would be great.
Sure thing. So, so the programs that we have, cut across all of those priority ingredients that we're sourcing, right, at a global level. In the U.S. Midwest, that includes, corn, soy, wheat, sugar beets, kind of a variety of different things. And I think there was a few questions in there specifically about our partnership with ADM, and that covers, corn, soy, and wheat. The ADM example and many of our programs are structured as pay for practice opportunities for growers. So they'll all include kind of a menu of different practice offerings with then different payment levels tied to that particular practice. In that ADM program, as an example, a lot of the practice options are things like looking at 4R type practices or nitrogen reductions, looking at cover cropping, looking at tillage reduction, with the opportunity, right, in some cases to stack multiple practices, if that's of interest to the grower. So exact structure varies a bit from program to program, but typically in this pay for practice format with a specific dollar amount tied to that particular practice.
That's great, Caitlin. It is helpful to have the mix of support. And Paul, I think the next question is for you. In the FieldPrint platform, are farmers able to see their scores relative to other farmers in the same region or within this similar farm characteristics?
So individually, no, but the magic really happens at the project and at the aggregate level, where FieldPrint projects have the ability to bubble up all that data and then look across the project as a whole and then look at project-based comparisons.
That's great. Deepika, the next is for you. And I think, whenever you understand one farming system and you learn about another, your curiosity is piqued. So what kind of cover crops, what do farmers do in cotton fields? If you could share a little bit about that system, that'd be great.
Thank you. Well, I mean, the whole US cotton spans across it's 17 cotton state. We are talking about different geographies. We are talking about different soils. We're talking about different management. So there is no one size fits all. So of course we have when we get the data from across all the US cotton growers, we have seen, we encourage the most common ones are rye, clover, radish, have a 2 or 3 way mix, custom blend as per your management goal, and sorghum, wheat, oats. The list can just go on and on. It all depends on which region I'm talking to. So honestly, I don't have one single answer. What are some of the cover crops? But if you're looking for more region specific, we are more than happy. Please email me. We are more than happy to help you with that. Thank you.
And I would encourage people to take a trip to a farm to learn more. I know a lot of farmers are interested in sharing what they do and how they do it, and that's no different than the folks working with the Cotton Trust Protocol. Just a fantastic way to learn and get perspective on what's happening. Um, the next question, Karali, is for you. So it's great to see the field print data supporting the regenerative principles. Are any members making claims off those specifically related to regenerative agriculture?
Yes, one thing that I wanted to highlight is like Field to Market, we have 5 project narrative claims that we allow our members to make when they are implementing Field Point project. And those claims are really based on their project, and they can be participation claim where they talk about the number of acres and growers involved in their project. They can talk about the different practices they implement in their project as adoption claim, or they can go further by talking about the different the improvement that they can see in their indicators based on those projects. And we have, for example, the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol makes some claim last year on their U.S. Cotton Trust project that is using the Field Point platform. And we can see we have those claims for members to be able to make when they are implementing their project. They are not regenerative specific claim, but they are based on their project result.
We have so many more questions and just 2 minutes remaining. So this was an interesting question. Anyone on the panel? So in thinking about support for regenerative agriculture, what do you see foresee happening in the policy or regulatory space related to Regen Ag? I think this is specifically thinking about Farm Bill. Any thoughts or comments?
Well, I'll just say briefly, who knows, if and when we might get a farm bill. But I would say, one of the things that, of course, we're always strong advocates for at the Nature Conservancy is, strong support and funding for our important conservation title programs in the Farm Bill. And so luckily, in that reconciliation package that passed recently, there was, I think, 17 billion or so in mandatory spending on conservation over the next 10 years or so. So that's great. That's a step in the right direction. In terms of what happens in or when or if the next farm bill, who knows? But
All right, Chris. Well, we're a little short on time. Karali, I've got one question for you, and then I'm going to wrap up. What are the next steps now that we've published this Regen Ag guidance?
So the guidance has been released as version 1.0, and we view it as a living resource that will continue to evolve like over the next. I think one of the next key steps will be to expand the economic section of it. Over the next year, we plan to build this in collaboration with our Innovative Finance Committee. And as we receive additional input and implementation feedback, we will continue to refine the guidance in future version.
Thank you so much, Karali. Thank you to our panelists today. Really appreciate you being here and sharing so much with us. As you heard, we can't do this alone. Partnerships will help the ag value chain be stronger and can help improve farmer livelihoods and resilient ecosystems. I'm also just very thankful for everyone who helped create the guidance in the first place, and look forward to working with you to build out the next iterations. A recap of the webinar is going to be sent via email next week. And speaking of next week, if you or your colleagues are in the DC area and want to dig deeper into this discussion, we'll be having an in-person briefing on regenerative agriculture on July 29th at our offices. Thank you all for being here, and we hope you have a great day.